Hello and welcome back to Web Design for Small Business. In this video, part 19, Location, we're going to actually create the location page for our site. Since none of the pages actually have any content, it's feeling a little on the empty side, and we want to start flushing out some of those pages. And we're going to start with the location simply because it's going to be the easiest, I guess, aside from the main page. But I'm waiting on an image for that, so we're putting that one off for now. Anyway, before we get started, I wanted to address a couple of bugs, or I guess oversights, that I noticed while cutting together the last video. So the first thing I want to address is this bug here. If you notice, whenever I go over any part of the content once I'm logged in, if you look at the bottom left corner, you notice that it's linking to log out. So if I click anywhere in the body, it's going to log me out. So I noticed this when I was trying to edit the account. Every time I tried, it was just logging me out. So why that happens, if we go back to our index.php page where we had added this check to make sure we were logged in, this bottom part here, so you notice where we copied and pasted this into here, we didn't actually get this last line, this A link. So basically we didn't close off the link, and thus everything became part of this logout link. So what we need to do to fix that, and if you notice here there's actually a bunch of tabs, so I'm going to delete those, hit enter, it'll bring me down backspace to get back to this proper tab spot, and just close off the anchor and list item tags. Okay, so that should do it. I also left a space here that I don't need, so I'm going to delete that and just cinch that up. Just a little bit of housekeeping there. So save that. And now when I go back and refresh, note now I don't have that same issue, so I should be able to log in. And not have any of those issues anymore. So now I should be able to finish testing this. So if I do that, hit clear, it resets it like it's supposed to. And that's what I wanted to check. Okay, so going back now to our Apache, the other thing, sorry, if I log out and log back in, how we had set up the other pages so that these lines lined up by adding that FA-FW. We don't have that here, so we're going to go and add that so that those two line up. So again, in the index page, find your two things, and FA-FW, FA-FW, save, refresh, check the login, and now those line up. So that is good. And that is all we needed to do for the code cleanup. So now we can start on our location. Okay. So now, depending on how you do this, typically, because this is a location and a contact, we want to have all your basic information, the address of where it's located, phone number, email. We're probably going to do a little Google map with a link, and you can also do a contact form. Now, depending on the type of business you have, I usually recommend that you should only have phone numbers and email addresses displayed if the user is logged in. That prevents spam bots from being able to see it, because when a spam bot goes in, they can either scan the PHP code, which it's not going to be in there if they just straight up download your PHP because it's stored elsewhere. You can actually store it in the database and have it pull it, or you can store it on your secure page and have it pull it. So you can hide that information from bots. However, with this specific restaurant, I know that they want their main point of contact to be the phone number, so we want that to be predominant on the page. Now, if your business is the type that it's pretty much all online, you don't want people calling you, and you want to exclude that, the best way to do that is just creating a contact form and then having them able to contact you through that form. It's also what I recommend if you want to do any form of email, because just having your email address there really opens you up to spam. So having a form that can validate and then send email through the form really does save you some. So that is my recommendation. But for now, we're just going to create more or less a page holder with some basic contact information. Okay, so going into here, opening up the location, going to delete this line, but I'm going to keep the H4s in there. 45 restaurant. I'm going to actually make this one an H3. And then the rest I'm going to put in H4s. Now there's two ways you can do this. Each time you put a header down, it'll automatically break it to the next line after. The other way is you could keep it all under one header and then just add manual breaks when you want each line to appear, type of thing. Either way will work. So we're going for 704 48th Street. I think the H4, if I remember correctly, will also automatically center it, but if not, we'll look into that later. I'm going to add a break there just because I want a bit of a space, and then I'm going to do the phone number, and then I'm going to do something a little bit different here because I'm going to create an anchor tag for the phone number. So I'm going to do an anchor tag for the phone number. So in here, I'm just going to type the phone number. So for the anchor tag, it's anchor, or A, and then href equals in double quotes. And what we want that to be is tel, T-E-L, colon, and then the 10-digit phone number, which you can have with or without hyphens. You can also automatically include the 1 if you want, so like that. And then basically what happens is when somebody clicks on that, it will give them that. one more thing after here. I'm going to add an icon file as well. Phone and phone alt just switch the direction. It basically flips it horizontally, and I can't remember which is which right now, so I'm just going to save this and then see what it looks like there. Yeah, okay, that's the way I want. But that icon is really big. I did put FA large, so I'm going to remove that. Yeah, that makes it a lot better size-wise. Okay, I could go one step further, make that smaller using FASM. I wanted it to be smaller. Honestly, I think I like that even more, so I'll just keep that. And I could put the icon at the front. I think I'm going to add a colon after the phone. Really, you can set this up however you like. Okay, and then I'm going to do the email address after that. Although I think I am going to hide the email address. So what I will do so in my core.php file here, I am going to add a line under these. Phone number is equal to (780-796-3313) and phone number full is equal to 1-780-796-3313. And if you want to be even more specific, you can add a plus sign in front of that, and that kind of makes it mobile friendly. Especially if you're doing a mobile number and or are trying to do text messages, you might want that. Otherwise you can delete it, it's not a big deal. Alright. So we will go with those two, and I actually put that under the email address. So cut paste, email address. And the reason why I'm writing these as fairly large is because if I'm trying to do something with customer information, I don't want it to get confused, and where I like to keep things as short as possible. In this case, I'm going to do the opposite and make it fairly large. So that way I know I'm never going to use these variables in anything else. Okay, and single quotes, info at highway45.ca. Okay, so I'm going to save those, close that out, go back here. So now instead of having this and having it exposed in the PHP, I can do phone number full Now, there are two ways that bots and hackers can find your information if you're worried about getting a whole bunch of spam, because you evidently will if you have your contact information on a website, because there are bots that just crawl websites pulling that information off them. So the number one way is protecting it under a login, so you can't see the information unless you're logged in. That's the best way. However, if they take it one step further and they're downloading your actual PHP files and the number is written in there, they will be able to see it. But when they download it, they don't see. This is exactly what they would see. So in this case, where it has the number, they're just seeing what the variable name is. They wouldn't actually see the number. However, because we're not protecting this behind a wall, when they view the HTML source code, it'll just show the number. That would be when you would want to protect it behind a login. However, as I said, they want that to be their main source of, or their main form of contact, and they want it as easy for people to find as possible. So I'm not going to really hide or protect that. And that's more or less on them now. Okay. So the email address, I will make it so that you can only see the email address if you're logged in. And same thing, I'm creating an anchor tag. Icon. Okay, and for the href for this one, it's going to be similar to what we did with the last one, but it's going to be mail to : and then our email address. Okay, now to make this so that it's only viewable if the person is logged in, we end this. So our page content here, which used to end here, now ends here. And then in here we go. If C, if you remember, that's our customer information, and if that exists, it means they're actually logged in. If they aren't logged in, it won't exist. So if C and echo. And we're going to echo that and end that. And then to start this again, we have to go page content is dot equal to, because this starts it and then this continues it. So this gets added to that. And sorry, I had that as echo. We have to change that. And this actually has to be page content is dot equal to as well. So yes. So this gets added to the page content variable. If that is, then that gets added to the page content variable, and then that gets added whether that is or not. There we go. Save that. Go back to our page. Refresh. And you notice there's no email. I'm not logged in, so I'm going to log in. And if I go back to location, there is an email address. And if I click on that or that, it will actually pop up. this will actually pop up in my email client, I believe. It did, but I haven't actually set up my email client, so that's on another screen, and it's trying to get me to set it up now. This one, if you have a mobile phone and you're viewing it on a web browser, that will actually cause it to allow you to make a call. But you need to have some kind of SIM card device attached to your computer, whether that be a cell phone or a EVDO modem? I don't know. Something that works off the cell line. Anyway, we're not going to worry about that, but this link will actually work from a cell phone. So if you click on it, it'll actually bring up a thing to call that number, which is super convenient, and people really like that. Now, these are a little close together, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another break here. And I'm actually going to do that here as well, just to give it more space, because like I said before, people like me with fat fingers, we don't want to accidentally hit the wrong thing, so having lots of clearance for buttons means we don't press two buttons at once. And then when we scale this down to cell phone size, that's what it'll look like. Right. Okay, so now that's this side. We have our address, where we're located, we have a phone number, and we have an email address. This is all left aligned, which is, I mean, it works. It does. If we wanted to center it, we probably could. We could either just put everything within a div and then center that div, or you could center each H4, or however you want to do that. You guys should be able to figure that out by now. But we're going to leave that basically in a column, and then we're going to create another column that has a map that we can actually click on. Okay, so in order to embed a Google map now, we need to go to Google. So just go to maps.google.com and find what you're actually trying to create a map to, your business. Now, if you don't have your business actually listed in Google, that is something that you should do. And it is typically as simple as finding your business on it, clicking, and in here, add your business, and then you can actually go through the process of getting your business set up on the map so that it shows your information. Once you find it, you can just kind of click on it. It'll bring it up here. Now, once we're here, you see it has the information. Doesn't have a website yet because we're in the process of making it. And you can hit this share button. And where it says send a link at the top, click over to embed a map. And then copy HTML. Just click on that. And now we go into our page. Hit enter there. Oh, sorry. We need to put it after this page content here. So we're going to put it right here, paste. And it pasted this long thing there, which is fine. Save that. And now if we go back, refresh, boom. So now we have a map, and you can actually move it around, zoom in, zoom out, get directions. View larger map should bring you into a new page. Yeah, it does. So that works for us. Now we can actually change the size of this if we don't like how large it is, but for our case it will probably work. Okay. However, we want this to go over here, so what we need to do is we need to create some columns, specifically two. And Bootstrap has a built-in column system already. So from the panel body here, we're going to create a new div underneath that. Div class equals row. And underneath that, we're going to create another one. Div class equals call dash sm, dash 5, double quotes, and then we're just going to tab this stuff back out. I'm going to move this to over there, just because I don't need it taking up excess space. Okay. Now, before our iframe here, we're going to close out that div, the column div, create another column div, class equals call dash sm for small, hyphen. If I say dash, I mean hyphen. Most people will call that a dash. A dash is actually twice the length of a hyphen and has different context in English grammar. So this is a hyphen, not a dash, but I may call it either. I think most people call it a dash, but that's all right. It is a hyphen. And that'll be 7. Okay. And put our iframe in that. And then we need to close off that div, and then close off our row div. And there we go. So now it should be nice and pretty. And we're going to save that and go back to our page and hit refresh. And boom, now it puts this over here and this over here. So the way those columns work is, if you remember when we set it up in Bootstrap, if you went with the default, which is what I went with, you'll have 12 columns. Now, when we set the column here, this number here, that is basically how many columns it's going to use. So this, the row basically means we're going to have it on a row, so that way you can have multiple rows. So in the first row, we're going to have the first column take up 5 column widths. The second one will take up 7. So it doesn't matter what numbers you give these, but they have to add up to 12. If you leave a gap, it'll basically left align them with the extra space on the right. But if you have any other rows or columns, it'll start getting really messy. So try to always make sure that they add up to 12. Now the the 2 letters in between here can be XS for extra small, SM for small, MD for medium, LG for large, or XL for extra large. And what those do is basically they're aligned to the screen size. So you can actually create multiple divs, or sorry, multiple classes for each column size. So for example, because I don't have an extra small here, when it gets to extra small, it's actually going to break out each of these onto their own. So when I do that, you can see what happens is it actually puts this column at full width and then drops this one underneath it. Now this one, if you notice, is also too wide now. So we can go and we can fix this and change it so that it'll actually scale for us, or we can just make it smaller. But for that, we go into here this width and height is what we're going to have to adjust. As you can see, there's nothing delineating what type of measurement we're using, and if you ever see that, it basically always means pixels. So this is 600 pixels width and 450 pixels wide, and that's a static size, so it's always going to be that size, which is why sometimes it's popping out on us. Now, there's unfortunately only two ways we can actually set this height and width, and that is either as pixels or as percentages. So fortunately for us, the width we can set to 100% and save that. And then when we refresh, notice that now no matter what size we put it at, it's actually fitting really nicely into that box. However, you may not like how much vertical space it's taking up. So for example, when it's on a bigger screen, it does take up a bit more than that. So if you want, you can adjust that height from the default. I would recommend keeping it in pixels. If you try to do it in percentage, because it's the only thing on this column, it'll actually shrink it up. So 100% will basically go from here to here, kind of the size of this box, and that doesn't work for us. So we do need to keep that in pixels, but you can adjust that as you see fit to kind of line up with your other text a little bit better. So I'm actually going to change that down to 400 pixels. Save that, refresh it. So it's still a little bit higher than that, but as you shrink it down onto smaller screens, it does fit a little bit better. So I went back and I had gone into here and menu satellite. So I got that satellite overview, and then I did the share, embed a page, and then this I changed to small, because I found that when I did that, it actually gave me more of the map. Anyway, I wanted to show more of the highways, so I kind of just redid that, and getting the actual landscape in there just kind of helps a little bit with identifying where that is. So I did that. And as I mentioned, changing the width to 100%. I changed the height from 450 to 400. Actually, when I did the smaller one, it was even smaller. But I saved that, brought that in, and this is what I get out of it. So, okay. So now that we have that, I'm going to go in and change a few things. So I changed this column to 6, this one to 12. So this one will be split right down the middle. And I'm going to create another column in here. Div class equals col-small-6. So I forgot one very important element. Silly me. We want to put in the hours of operation. Now, you might have to do it where each line you put in a day of the week, but since these guys have the exact same hours, 5 days a week, it makes it pretty simple. Tuesday to Saturday. So Tuesday to Saturday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. is their hours of operation. However, we can actually take this one step further. So first I'll save it. And now that I'm making this its own thing, I can actually make this one a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change that height to 600 pixels. Okay, now if I refresh it, we get the restaurant, we get our hours of operation. So now, under here, we are going to do our same break of the page content. Now I'm going to add some actual PHP code, and one convenient thing, PHP code basically just reads from top to bottom. So if you want to put in information here, you can actually do the calculations at the very top, and that way you're keeping all of your code together without having to break it up with bits of math in between. Okay, so current time is equal to date with parentheses, inside the parentheses double quotes, and inside the double quotes capital H colon lowercase I. Hi. Brief explanation. H, the capital H is the 24-hour hour. So the hour in 24-hour clock with a preceding 0. So it goes from 00 through 23. And then lowercase I is the same but for minutes, so it goes from 00 to 59. So we're getting the current time in the 24-hour clock, hour and minute. Okay, so then we go open time. Now you might have to do this multiple times if you have multiple opening times, or it might get a little complicated. It's pretty simple for me because I only have one opening time and one closing time. So my opening time, and then you might have to do a switch where if current day is this day, then this is the opening hour, and I can show you a little bit of that later on. So for this one, we go date create from format. Date create from format. It is a mouthful. Okay, now in here, first we have to put the format that we want it to be. So the same, and then comma, and then the actual value that we're giving it. So that would be 1100. And that should also be in double quotes. Okay, so it's saying this should be this format and then create a date from it. Now, because we're not actually specifying a date, this is just a time, it will, if there's any information not being supplied, it assumes the current. So it'll take today's date and apply it with just this time, which is fine. That's actually what we want. So close time is equal to date create from format parentheses h:(I), comma, quotes, sorry, and then we want 8 p.m. However, 8 p.m. is going to actually be 20. And remember, because we're using this capital H, if, for example, this was 9 a.m., it would actually be 09 and not just 9. So keep that in mind. Okay, so from 11 to 8, and this is the current time. So then we go if current time is less than or equal to our close time, and, so double ampersands, current time is greater than or equal to our open time, then is open is set to span class is equal to text success, and in here open, I'm also going to go B, I, and H1. And then a semicolon after that, and then else, and then this entire thing within the parentheses, within the curly bracers, I'm going to copy and paste again. I'm going to hit enter just before that else so that it brings it down to another line because this is getting pretty long. And I'm going to change the open to closed and text success to text danger. Okay. Now I had this, I can actually get rid of this. Just add a new line. So single quote, dot, dot, single quote, and then within these single quotes, add delete the H1 out of there and there, and put it here. H1 H1 H1, okay, and then in here is open. Okay, so that's what it should look like now. So header 1, and then inside the header 1, single quotes, double dots, and then $ is open with the capital O, which is the same variable we used up here. And basically it will do the check to see if the current time is less than or equal to the closing time. Actually, we will make that just less than the closing time. And it's also equal to or greater than the opening time. So if it's basically from 11 a.m. to just before 8 p.m. So if it's exactly 8 p.m., it will show closed. But if it's any time between those two, it should show open. So save and go back here, refresh that, and now I get this big closed. So if it were actually open right now, because right now I'm working at just after midnight there, so if that were actually open, it would show that. And a way you can do that is just flip these signs around, and you can see what it'll look like in the other way. So now because I reverse those, it'll actually show me open. Oh. If you're switching them around, you also have to change the and to an or, because it has to be one or the other. It will not be both. So it'll automatically fail, and then you get the closed anyway. My bad. Okay, refresh that, and now it shows open. Okay, so that's what it looks like when it's open. And we can actually also change that to, say, currently. Currently open, currently closed. Right. So I'm just going to switch my signs back around. Now we can actually even take this one step further. So between these two, we can go else if, and then another set of parentheses and curly bracers. So I'm going to copy that for my curly bracers, and then in here, if current time is less than close time and current time is less than create from format HI, comma 1930, and I need to put that in double quotes. Okay. So what this says, and I'm just going to put this on a new line and tab it over so that I know that it's part of this. Okay. So basically, this says that if the current time is less than the closing time, but it's, sorry, this should be greater than, but it's greater than 30 minutes before closing, then give it this message instead, which will be closing soon. Because it's a restaurant and it takes time to cook food, if you're coming in right before they're about to close, they might not be able to actually get you your food before they close. So they might deny you an order, depending on how busy they are. So it's good to know that. Now, it doesn't necessarily deny them, it just changes the message from currently open to will be closing soon. And we're going to change that one from danger to warning. Okay. And if we want to see what that actually looks like, another way we can test these things is just copy it, and then underneath this, just paste it there, because what that'll do is regardless of whatever you have in here, it'll overwrite it with this. So if we just want to see what that'll look like, we refresh that, we'll be closing soon. Now, when we have that, it is fairly large. I don't know if I want it to be that large. So I'm just going to comment this row out. So the currently closed is also doing that. Ugh, I do not like that at all. So I'm going to get rid of the currently. And I'm going to get rid of the will be. So I'm going to just see. I know that the open and close will look fine. I just want to see how this closing soon will look. The other thing you could do is you can just, and see it just automatically drops it down. And I don't mind that, actually. Yeah. Okay, so that works for me. I'm happy with that. So I am just going to delete this line because we don't need that. And yeah, we're good with that. So going to save that. Okay, so one last thing that we need to do, now that we have it able to detect what time it is, we also need it to detect what day it is, because all day Sunday and Monday were closed. So we need to be able to check to make sure that those days that were closed, it'll actually show up as closed here. Another thing that we're going to want to do is have a switch set in the administrative section for future use, where they can manually set if it's open or closed. So we want to incorporate that into our code now to kind of future-proof it. So what we're going to do is we're going to slightly change the way that we present this data, because we're no longer just going to have one case where it's going to be open, closed, or coming soon. So we will represent that through a switch. So switch, we're going to call the variable OC for open or closed. And we're going to just give it integer values. So if it's 0, then OCM is equal to that case 1 OCM, M for message, is going to be open, and case 2 going to be closing soon. Okay, and I'm not going to have a default in this case. If it's not 0, 1, or 2, it won't do anything and thus won't show any message. Although I suppose I could just kind of create a null variable as the default to prevent it from not being able to find the variable and giving us an error message. So that changes to OCM. There we go. Okay, so we created our switch. Now what we need to do is we need to set these differently. So in this case, OC is equal to 1. Oh. Else in this case, OC is equal to 2. Else OC is equal to 0. Okay. Now we need to do something for the date. So, new variable, DOW for day of week, is equal to date, parentheses, semicolon, inside the date, double quotes, and inside the double quotes, a lowercase w. Lowercase w will give us a numeric representation of the day of the week. 0 is Sunday, 1 is Monday, and so on and so forth until we get to Saturday, which would be 6. Conveniently for us, the days that we are closed are Sunday, Monday, which in this case would be 0 and 1. So we just have to check to see if it's less than 2. So if DOW is less than 2, and OC is equal to 0, else so basically we want to check to see if the day of the week is less than 2, so that would make it equal to Sunday or Monday. If that's the case, then we set that to closed. Otherwise, check the time. So if it's during one of the days that we're open, check the time. If it's not, then do that. Okay, then after this one, so we have it do kind of the automatic ones. Now we want to do the manual ones after, because the manual ones will automatically override anything else that we've had in there. So if manual open is equal to 1, do that, just if it exists. Then OC is set to 1. If manual closed OC is set to 0. So basically with these two statements here, if we create a variable called manual open and give it a Boolean value of 1, then we will overwrite any of the time and day information and make it forced to be open. Then we check to see if manual closed is set to is created and set to a Boolean value of 1. Then we will automatically force it closed. Note that we have the closed under the open, so if for some reason both of those are checked, which will make it that that can't happen, but if for some reason they were, the closed would override the open. Alright, so saving that, and we can go back here, refresh this, and they are still closed. Alright, that will do us for today. I will see you guys in the next video.